Hi guys, and welcome back to my channel. My name is Linny, and in today's video I'm going to talk about my options going forward with IVF. So if you are not familiar with me, my story, my channel, my husband and I struggle with infertility. We conceived our first daughter through IVF and through our very first IVF cycle, so that was a fresh transfer. In the past couple of months, we have done 2 frozen embryo transfers, one that completely failed and one that ended in a chemical pregnancy. So obviously going forward, I wanted to know, I asked my doctor, is there anything that we can do differently? What are my options at this point? IVF is not cheap. It is expensive. It's more so expensive to do the fresh transfers than it is to do the frozen transfers. With the frozen transfers, you already have your embryos. So we are lucky we had 10 and now we currently have 8. So we are lucky, and I feel so blessed to still have 8 embryos left. But yeah, so going over our options. So let me kind of walk you through what the past 2 transfers that I've done were exactly the same. So I started by taking estrogen. I would go in for my lining and blood work 2 weeks after I started estrogen. If all looked good, I would start my progesterone and oil shots, and then 6 days later we would transfer. And that is what both cycles were. Both cycles went flawlessly. My uterus looked great. The embryos were amazing. They were both hatching, so there was absolutely no reason for these embryos to not work. Okay, so the first option my doctor gave me, which is what she suggested I do, was to transfer again, to do the same exact thing. And I personally feel a little uneasy about this because the past 2 have not worked. You know, I voiced to her my complete opinion on this. I just feel like something is not right. Like, this should not be happening. And like I had said before, and like I will probably mention several other times, this is not cheap. Like, my husband and I work very hard for our money, and when you do IVF, you're basically just gambling it away. It's very hard. It's a struggle. This is how my doctor explained it to me. If you were to take a coin and flip it 3 times, 2 out of 3 of those times, it is likely to land on the same thing. It is less likely to land on the same thing 3 times. So a lot of offices don't even offer you other options until you've had 3 failed frozen embryo transfers. So at this point we've had 2. And to be completely honest with you, I felt like something was off for both transfers. Like, doing a fresh transfer and a frozen transfer is completely different. I've always felt very uneasy with the fact that the fresh transfers are just so much less like under control. I feel like with the fresh transfer, I went in for several ultrasounds and blood work before actually transferring. And with the frozen transfers, I only went in with 1. So it's always I just always felt a little uneasy doing these frozen transfers. I don't know, I guess it's just not what I'm used to. Anywho, moving on to number 2. So the second option she gave us is ERA testing. So that stands for endometrial receptivity assay. And basically, it tests, specifically I believe it tests the progesterone at the time that you would transfer, and it can tell you, like, pinpoint the exact amount of progesterone that you need or don't need at the time of your transfer. So I would go through a mock transfer. So I would do exactly what I did these past 2 transfers. This is what we chose to do. And instead of transferring an embryo, they would take a biopsy of my uterus at that time, and they would send it away to the lab, and basically in 2 to 3 weeks, I think, you find out, you know, do I need more progesterone than I've been taking, or do I need less progesterone? And I don't know. I don't know. To me, my doctor is a little uneasy because the testing for this is still very, very new. So she's not 100% sold on the ERA testing. My personal opinion, for some reason in the back of my mind, this whole time, I have just felt like the timing has been wrong. I don't know why. I don't know what it is. Ever since the first transfer, for some reason, I have just felt like the timing has been off. I just don't know. So when she mentioned to me the ERA testing, my initial thought was, yes, let's do it. Like, this is it. This is the answer to our problem. I'm still, doing more research and whatnot, but that was our second option. Our third option is to transfer again, as normal, but to transfer 2 embryos. So this has always sat a little uneasy with me too. Carrying twins is like a huge thing to put your body through. To me, it's not to be taken lightly. To transfer 2 embryos is a big deal because there's obviously the chance that they both take, which some people look at it as like, well, you're getting 2 for the price of 1. Yes, that's true. It's just 2 babies is a big commitment to have 2 babies, but it's also a big commitment to carry 2 babies and to put your body through that. And then also, if the timing is off, or if my uterus is for some reason not allowing these babies to implant, we are then throwing away 2 embryos instead of 1, which is really, really what I guess concerns me. We do have a good amount of embryos still frozen, and I highly doubt that we could ever afford to be able to transfer the remaining 8. So that is an option, but I'm just not quite sure how I feel about that. So, moving on to number 4. My 4th option that she gave me is that we can do a natural cycle. So basically, you basically just kind of go with your natural cycle. You go in for a lot more ultrasounds and blood work. And, all of these options cost money. For me, unfortunately, like, my insurance does not cover any aspect of anything infertility. So, like, every time I go in for an ultrasound and blood work, we are paying out of pocket for that, and it is not cheap. It is roughly about $1,200 for us to do just one ultrasound and blood work. So for every frozen embryo transfer that we've done, we've spent about an extra $1,200 for the ultrasound and blood work. So to do the natural cycle and have to go in for, she said it would be 5 ultrasounds and blood work, give or take maybe 1 or 2, but there's no way to tell. So potentially anywhere from 3 to 7, if you want to look at it that way. That is $1,200 every time I go in, and every time you go in, they do ultrasound and blood work same day. So plus the cost of the frozen embryo transfer, And then there is still some medications that you take for that as well. So that is a big expense for us. It's, I guess, the same with the ERA testing. So the ERA testing you're paying for as if you're doing a normal frozen embryo transfer. It is the same cost. Well, I shouldn't say it's the same cost. It is slightly cheaper, but not significantly cheaper. And then for us to transfer again, obviously, we know the cost of that at this point. So yeah, my clinic is also not very experienced in the natural cycles, and my doctor does not feel comfortable with me doing that at this point. She said that it is completely up to me. Those are my 4 options that I have at this point. And if I want to go ahead and do a natural cycle, they have done them. And she will do one for me. But she just wanted to let me know up front, which I do appreciate, that it is not something they recommend. They do not do them on a regular basis. They're not as comfortable doing them. Just because there's more that can go wrong during a natural cycle versus a medicated cycle. A medicated cycle is more controlled. So, yeah. Those are our 4 options. We obviously are thinking about them, researching, praying, and just hoping that we choose the right one. I will say at this point, I'm kind of leaning towards the ERA testing just because, like I had mentioned, for some reason, I feel like the timing is off. I don't know. I just feel like the timing is off. So, yeah. So at this point, that's what I'm leaning towards. But yeah, if you guys have any insight, I am all ears. I love hearing other people's stories and what you guys went through. So please, in the comments below, please share with me, the procedures that you guys have gone through and what worked for you and what you guys would do if you were in my position. I hope that you guys enjoyed this video, and I will see you in my next one.